Hey everyone, and welcome to another video. Tonight we have 2 hours of horror stories. I hope you all enjoy them. If you do, please be sure to drop a like rating. Liking the video is the easiest and best way to help out the channel. It ensures more people can see the content, and I just also appreciate it. Subscribing if you are new is also very much appreciated. We are currently less than 100 subscribers away from hitting 133,000, so if you want to help me get there, that is very much appreciated as well. Anyways, sit back, do whatever it is that you do to relax, enjoy the 2 hours of horror stories with no mid-roll ads, except for the one right after this intro. There will not be any more after that one. And as always, I hope you all have a great night. My hand is broken. I'm pretty sure about that much. The pinky is bent at an unusual angle at the knuckle, and the ring finger isn't far behind. The skin across my knuckles is peeled back in places with raw, dark meat showing through, and the blood has slowed to an ooze that pools in the creases of my palm and drips into the tile in a thin line. I did this to myself. I want to be upfront and clear about that. The door didn't do it. It just didn't open. That's the whole problem with the door. It just sits there in the frame like it's part of the wall. I hit it until I couldn't hit it anymore, and all I have to show for it is a broken hand and a streak of blood across the wood. I should probably back up, though. The name on the deed, not that I have a deed to anything anymore, not as of about 4 hours ago, is Franklin Dale Marin. I go by Frank. I'm 50 years old, which means I'm too old to be sitting on a bathroom floor in a diner I've never been to before. I'm too old for a lot of stuff. I'm too old to be running too, but that's what I was doing when I pulled into the parking lot of this place. I was running from Briarwood. Specifically, I was running from my wife, Diane. Or I guess she's not my wife anymore. Not really. Not after tonight, and from our house. And from the kid, our boy, Bryce. 11 years old and built like a fire hydrant. I had 4 suitcases in the back of my DeVille. That's it. 11 years of being a father reduced to 4 suitcases. A few folded 20s in my pocket, with 1 earmarked for gas. I was going to Cancun. That's what I'd been telling myself anyway. That my father was buried somewhere down there and I owed it to myself. And to him. To go find the son of a... or find the place. Or just find somewhere that was a long way from where I was. Cancun. As if you've ever been to Cancun. As if you even know the old guy made it that far. The voice in my head has been doing that all night. I've just been ignoring it. I found this place. No sign out front that I could read. Just a blinking neon thing in the window that might have said open, or might have said something else. About 5 miles outside of Briarwood. Just 5 miles. I didn't even make it 5 miles before I needed a drink. The parking lot was almost full, which surprised me. The inside of the place was nearly empty, bar a few stools. A TV on the wall with the sound on mute. The captions on the screen reading, "Unseasonable heat wave expected to continue throughout the week." Seemed about right for Oklahoma. I ordered a Campari, then another, and another. By the 4th one, the bartender cut me off, and I folded face first into the crook of my arms and passed out on the bar like the kind of man I always swore I wouldn't become. I dreamed. I don't want to talk about what I dreamed about, but it had to do with my father and a fire poker, and a sound I've only heard one time in my life. The sound of something going into something it shouldn't. You know the sound. Or you don't. I woke up and my neck ached, and there were more cars in the parking lot than when I'd come in, which made no sense, and the bar had fewer people. I didn't think about either one of those things hard enough, and that was a mistake. I asked the bartender for the bathroom. "Pass the machine," he said. There was a jukebox at the end of the bar, dark and not running. The kind with actual discs in its belly. I could see my reflection warped in the glass of it. 3 of me. If I tilted my head right, left Frank with the soft jaw, center Frank with the turned down mouth, right Frank with the gray at the temple, and none of them looked like somebody who was on his way to a better life. There was a smear on the side of the jukebox. Ketchup, maybe. Maybe not. The hallway smelled like mop water and urinal cakes. The bathroom door said gents in stenciled paint. I shouldered it open. One stall, one urinal, one sink. A mirror. A warped little postage stamp of a thing, glued crooked above the basin that showed me only the middle slice of my face. Eyes, nose, and the top half of my mouth. My eyes were bloodshot. The light overhead buzzed and flickered and buzzed some more. I stood at the urinal and couldn't go. My body does that sometimes when it thinks something is watching. I stared at the tile. Some joker had scratched a pair of tits into the grout. Underneath, in block letters, "Call Megan for a real good time," and a phone number. Megan. I knew a Megan once. 17 years old. Worked the overnight intake desk at Briarwood Hospital back when I was the night janitor. Skinny girl, hair always a different color, laugh like a cancerous grandma. She smoked out back with me on breaks, leaning against the dumpster, and one night she said, "Why do you always smell like cherry pipe tobacco if you don't smoke a pipe?" And I said, "My father did," and she just nodded, as if that settled it. She OD'd in the ER bathroom that same summer. I mopped around the chalk outline. The bleach pruned the skin on my hands for a week. You tell yourself you ain't responsible, but you remember every kid who dies within 50 yards of your mop, don't you? I finished the urinal, washed my face. The water was lukewarm. Warm. Even, and I splashed some of it on my face and got some in my mouth without meaning to and wiped my hands on my slacks. I looked at myself in the mirror, just the middle slice, eyes and nose and the crease of my mouth. "You look like hell," I told Mirror Frank. "Right back at ya." Mirror Frank said. I checked the stall, door hanging off kilter, toilet with a burn black ring, somebody's jacket balled up in the corner. Kids leave stuff everywhere. I turned toward the door, and I stopped. Something was wrong. Some old part of me. The part that learned to read a room before I could read words. The part that kept 8-year-old Frank breathing through a childhood that should have killed him. That part went quiet and cold and knew before the rest of me did. The buzz of the light was gone. The muffled clink of glasses from the bar was gone. Even the sound of my own breathing seemed to get swallowed up, like the bathroom had taken my breath and was holding it for me. I reached for the handle. Brass knob, cold under my hand, which didn't even make sense given the heat. And then I turned it. It didn't move. Not an inch. Not the quarter inch of give that even a locked door will sometimes offer. "Hey," I said to the wood. "Hey, come on." I tried again. Both hands, full grip. Torque it right, but nothing. "Hey!" I hit the door with my palm. Then my fist. I'm not going to narrate the next few minutes in detail because I'm not proud of them. I'll just say that somewhere in there I lost control of the sensible part of my brain entirely. And by the time I came back to myself, I was sitting on the floor with my back against the door and my hand wrecked and my face wet, and the voice in my head very, very quiet. The way it gets when even it doesn't have anything to say. "You deserve it, Frankie. Every bit of it." My name was on the deed, and now I'm sitting here thinking about 2015. August 10:34 p.m. A nurse who looked uncanny, like a bulldog, came out and told me, "It's a boy, Mr. Marin. A big, healthy boy." And I did what a man does. I smiled. I passed out cigars. I let the other men in the waiting room slap me on the back. "Attaboy, Frank. Future ball player right there." But later, standing alone in that puke-green hospital hallway, the thought surfaced like something dead floating up from deep water. A girl. I wanted a girl. I don't fully know why. Maybe I thought a girl would have been quieter, less likely to grow up into the kind of loud and ultimately disappointed man I saw staring back at me from every dark window I passed. A man with his father's eyes and the beginnings of his father's protruding gut. His father's particular talent for being present in body only. Diane was beautiful in that hospital bed. Even exhausted, even gray with it. She was the prettiest thing I'd ever seen. And the baby was big and healthy. Just like the nurse said, red-faced and squealing. I held him and felt the surprising weight of him, and I buried the thought. I told myself I'd buried it. I played the hand I was dealt. I played it for 11 years. You call that playing? You were somewhere else the whole time, Frankie. Even when you were in the room. I think about the night I left. 4 hours ago. Though it feels like longer from down here on the floor. Diane was in the doorway crying. Still the prettiest thing. With Bryce at her hip. Half a boy, really. And more skin than anything. 11 years old and sad in a way that no 11-year-old should be. But he wasn't crying. That washed-out stare he'd had since he was 2. The one that made something cold move up my spine every time I felt it on me. He already knew. I could see it on him. He knew his father was going, and he knew his father had been gone long before tonight. I thought, sitting in the cruiser in the driveway with my hands on the wheel, and the keys not yet in the ignition, I thought, maybe I got my wish after all. I looked at Bryce through the window, at my sad and gentle boy who was so unlike the other boys in town, so unlike the boy I was at that age, and the thought came up like bubbling poison. A girl. I wanted a girl. And maybe that's what I got. I'm not going to defend that. I'm not going to dress it up. That's what I thought, sitting in my car in my driveway, about my 11-year-old son who was watching me leave him. I drove away. Figured a neighbor would call someone. Figured Cancun sounded warm and final and far. And that was enough. You are a filthy man, Mr. Marin. A filthy, filthy man. I know. The dripping won't stop. The faucet has been dripping since I got in here. I think. I don't know anymore. And each drop hits the basin like a little bell. High and clear and maddening, and I keep watching it. Gather, swell, detach, fall. Gather, swell, detach, fall. Or the water, Frankie. Don't forget about the water. I've been trying not to think about that. About the water I got in my mouth when I washed my face. About the fact that something in my stomach has been nodding and on-nodding ever since. And twice now I've had to grip the sink and ride out nausea that crests and passes and comes back worse. The light is doing something too. Flickering. On, off, on. And in the dark between the flickers, just for a half second, just long enough that I can't be sure, I see shapes that aren't there when the light is back on. Or maybe they are there. Maybe I just can't see them when the light is on. The little window above the stall is prison-sized, way too high for me to reach. But I can see sunlight coming through it, which means it's still the same day. Which means I haven't been in here as long as it feels. I look at my hand. The blood has dried in the creases of my palm. The broken fingers have swollen up thick and purple, and I can't flex them without the kind of pain that makes your vision go white at the edges. I look at Mirror Frank. He looks back at me from the middle of his face. Just the eyes. Just the nose. Just the wreckage of a mouth. He looks scared. Because you are scared. Coward. Yeah, I tell him. I sure am. It doesn't make anything better. The door doesn't open. The light keeps doing what it does. But it's the first honest thing I've said in, God, I don't know, years maybe. The faucet is still dripping, and I just threw up. There was water in it. Way more water than I've had to drink. Part 2. It's been a full day. I know that because of that little window above the stall. I can't see out of it, but I can see through it. Sort of. When light came through this morning, I knew it was day. Now it's a dark gray smear, and I know it's night. I've been in here a full day. My knee is bad now. Did something to it when I tried to stand on a trash can and jump up and see through the window, which, in hindsight, was one of the stupider things I've done in a life that has no shortage of stupid. Something went pop, pop when I came down wrong, and now every time I put weight on it, the kneecap grinds like a sandbag. So I'm limping. 3 limps from door to sink, 2 from sink to urinal, turn, 3 back. It hurts like hell, but it's all I've got to keep from going insane. My broken hand throbs in time with the drip. Drip, pain, drip, pain, drip, pain. I've been going through the jacket. Someone left it in the stall all balled up in the corner. This is the 4th time I've picked it up. I keep putting it down and picking it up because there's nothing else to do in here. And because I keep thinking I've missed something. And because at some point I stopped being embarrassed about how desperate it all is. It's denim. The patches tell me something about whoever owned it. A skull with roses growing through the eye sockets, a faded American flag, and stitched in red thread with the words, "Live free or die." New Hampshire. That was a New Hampshire thing, wasn't it? Their state motto or whatever. So this jacket belonged to someone from New Hampshire. Or someone who'd been to New Hampshire. Someone who'd sat in this stall and taken off their jacket and left it here and what? Left through the door that I can't open? I push this thought away before it angers me, and I check the pockets. Again, I've done the outer ones twice already and nothing. Not even pocket lint. This time, I try the inside pocket. The one against the chest, and my fingers find something. Paper folded up tight that I swear I couldn't feel before. I pull it out. Use my good hand and my teeth to get it open because the broken fingers on my right hand have swollen up purple, and I can't grip anything smaller than a doorknob with them. The paper is old and yellowed and signed at the edges. The writing is in pencil, erased and rewritten at least 3 times over, and I can see the ghost marks of the earlier attempts underneath the final version. 4 words. Don't drink the water. I stared at it for a long time. Then I look at the sink. Gather, swell, detach, fall. I already drank the water. I want to be clear-eyed about that. Not on purpose. I splashed it on my face last night when I first came in, and got some in my mouth. Just a little. Maybe more than a little. I rubbed my eyes with wet palms. I didn't think anything of it because why would I? It was a sink in a diner bathroom. It was just water. After you drank it, Frankie. After you took it inside you. My stomach has been doing something since then. Not pain exactly. More like a slow churning. Something that crests and recedes and crests again. Worse each time. My head feels stuffed. Thoughts moving like they're wading through a ocean current. I told myself it was the Campari hangover. But that was this morning, and it's not getting better. I crumple the note and throw it at the toilet. It hits the rim, bounces, lands near the base, and unfolds slowly in the flickering light. Don't drink the water. Too late, I tell it. Too late. My lips taste like metal and old hose water. The kind of hose water that's been sitting in the pipe since last summer. Bryce used to drink from the spigot out back, and Diane would scream about parasites, amoebas, brain-eating microbes, and Bryce would just look at her with that patient, untroubled look as if he'd already made his peace with the world, and everything in it. That look that used to make me want to shake him and scream, "Get mad! Throw something! Be a boy!" I never said it out loud. I want that on record. I never laid a hand on that boy either, which is the one thing I've got over my own father. Some nights it was the only thing, but the voice in your head doesn't have to come out of your mouth to do damage. Kids feel the shape of what you're not saying. Bryce always did. Who made him that way, Frankie? Who taught him that staying small was how you stayed safe? I went to the toilet for water. I want to be honest about this, too. I'm trying to be honest about things. It seems to be the one new habit I've picked up in here. I went to the stall and I leaned over the bowl and I looked at it. There was a hair floating on the surface. One long, dark strand of hair. It made me think of Megan, on the ER floor with her hair fanned out around her, arms stretched wide like she was trying to make a snow angel. I didn't drink from the toilet, but I thought about it. That's where I'm at. That's what a day in this room has done to me. My throat feels like I swallowed a fistful of sand. My tongue sticks to the roof of my mouth when I talk, and I've been talking more than I should. To the mirror, to the door, to the voice in my head, to nobody. All I know is that I would give my other hand for a glass of water that wasn't dripping from the faucet. Not yet, you mean? You ain't that thirsty yet. The lights went out. Just for a moment. 12 Mississippi. I counted. But long enough that I made a sound I'm not going to describe, and my good hand flew out and found the edge of the sink and held on like it was the rail of a ship going down. The dark in here isn't regular. It's the kind where you can't tell if your eyes are open or closed, or even where your hands are, even if they're right in front of your eyes. When the light came back, I said, "See? Power surge. Just a hiccup." Out loud to nobody. My heart didn't believe me for about 10 minutes. I stopped pacing eventually and went back to the door. I don't know why I keep going back to that door. It hasn't changed, and it will not change. The knob is a decoration on a wall, but I keep going back the way your tongue keeps finding the socket of a pulled tooth, compulsively unable to help itself. I press my palm over the bloody smear on the wood, the streak I left last night when I split my knuckles open, and I pressed hard and I said something I swore I would not say. I said, "Please." I said I got the message. I'm a coward. You win. Just let me out and I'll call them. I'll go back. I'll send them money. You're bargaining with the bathroom door, Frankie. The voice was right. I stopped talking. And then I felt it. Through my palm, I swear I felt the faintest pulse, like something on the other side shifting its weight or leaning in, an ear pressed to the panel. Something like that. I yanked my hand back. "Who's there?" My voice came out louder than I meant it to. "Hey, who's there? Open the door." Nothing. I pressed my ear to the wood and it was ice cold, colder than it had been just a second ago. Cold enough that the cartilage of my ear stung. I held my breath. I listened past the blood in my own head and the drip behind me, and a sound. Something between a grunt and a groan, muffled by the wood. It went on for a few seconds, then stopped. Then the faucet dripped louder. Gather, swell, detach, fall. I'm sitting with my back against the door now. I can feel the cold of it through my shirt. The light is doing its thing overhead. Buzz, flicker, buzz. And I'm looking at the note on the floor by the toilet. My tongue is leather. My hand is a thing that happens to be attached to my arm and occasionally reminds me it's there. By turning the pain up so much I can feel it in my teeth. I keep thinking about Bryce. I took him fishing once. He was 5, maybe 6. Drove us out to Lake Pemberton with 2 rods and a tackle box my uncle had given me, and a cooler full of beer that I told myself I wouldn't drink all of, but did anyway. We sat on that dock for 3 hours, and Bryce didn't complain once. Not once. About the heat, not about the boredom, or about the fact that we weren't catching anything. He just sat there, fat legs dangling over the water, holding his rod the way I showed him, patient as a saint. We caught nothing. Not a single fish. I was furious. But not at the lake or the bait. I know that now, and I think I knew it then, but at Bryce. At the way he just accepted it. The way he reeled in his empty line at the end of the day and said, in that gentle voice of his, "That's okay, Dad. Maybe next time." I wanted to grab him by the shoulders. I wanted to scream at him to be angry about something the way a normal boy would be angry. I drove us home in silence instead. He sat in the passenger seat with his hands folded in his lap, and I thought, and I remember this clearly, I remember it the way you remember things that haunt you. I thought, this is what I'm stuck with. And whose fault is that? Who taught him that staying quiet kept him safe? Who was it that made the room go cold every time he walked in? Who made him practice being invisible? The grunting is starting again, from the other side of the door, and not quite human sounding, and not quite not. I don't move toward it this time. I look at the notes. I look at the sink. I notice the scratches on the wall when the light steadies for long enough. They're on the tile to the left of the urinal. Down low, some. Scratched in with something hard and thin. A key maybe, or a belt buckle. Not too sure, but something with a point and a lot of time. 3 uneven lines that got smaller toward the bottom. Help me, please. I'm sorry. I stare at them for a long time. I wonder if whoever wrote that had a son, if they'd left someone behind the way I left Bryce and Diane. Driven away with a trunk full of suitcases and a story about Cancun to paper over the part of their brain that knew better. If they'd sat on this same floor and thought, I'll call later. Someone else will handle it. It's not my problem anymore. And I wonder. And this is the thread I can't stop pulling. Whether they regretted it, wherever they are now. Or whether they just died in here, still convinced they'd made the right call, that it was for the best, that some people aren't cut out for the life they ended up with, and there's no shame in admitting it. Like you, Frankie? Here is something I have never said out loud. My father was a mean, vicious man. Bloodshot at 10 in the morning, the kind of drunk who'd beat you bloody for breathing too loud, for existing in a way that reminded him of his own failures. I swore I would never be that. Never raise a hand to my kid. Never make my son afraid. And I didn't. But maybe that was worse. Because instead of fear, I gave Bryce something arguably worse. Indifference. That creeping kind. The kind that hardens over years until one day you realize you can't remember the last time you looked at your son and felt anything other than a dull resentment. A resentment that he existed. A resentment that he was soft. A resentment that Diane loved him so easily when it cost me everything just to be in the same room as him. A resentment that I was supposed to love him too. To perform it. To take this sad and gentle creature the nurse had put in my arms. And feel what a father was supposed to feel. You wanted a girl because you thought a girl would be easier to ignore. Admit it, Frankie. A girl would have been Diane's problem. But a boy you had to shape. A boy you had to turn into a man. And you couldn't do it. You didn't even try. I close my eyes. When I open them, I'm still here. I go back to the door because there's nowhere else to go. I press my forehead against the wood. It's warmer than it should be. Or I'm colder than I should be, which is more likely. The cold has been coming up through the tiles all day, into my shoes, into my ankles, like the floor is slowly drinking me down. October in Briarwood does this. Hot one day, cold the next. And the year we didn't replace the furnace filter, Bryce got bronchitis for 3 weeks. And I told Diane it built character, and she looked at me like I'd said it in a language she didn't speak. I breathed slowly. Breathing fast makes the room tilt, I noticed. My breath fogs the wood. I watch it. 3 puffs. 4. Little ghost clouds blooming against the chipped brown paint. There and then gone. There and then gone. And I count them because counting is something to do. And I have almost run out of everything else. Then I push away and do the inventory. Stall, urinal, sink, mirror, jacket, light. That's it. That's the whole world. The light buzzes. Then it goes out. I make a sound I am going to decline to describe. My good hand finds the sink edge by muscle memory, and I hold on. I close my eyes even though there's nothing to close them against it. It just helps to choose the dark rather than have it handed to you. I count. 1 Mississippi. 2. When I was a boy and my father locked me in the hall closet, go in there and think about what you done. I counted in the dark. Numbers like rungs. Something to climb out of my life and run away. 12 Mississippi. The light snaps back with a spit and a flicker and holds. My heart takes a while to catch up. The little window above glows yellow from whatever outside light is still out there. Parking lot lamp, maybe. The world still running its errands without me. And for some reason, that's the thing that gets me. Not the door or the water or the scratches on the wall. Just that yellow glow. Just the fact that it's out there and I'm in here. And I did this. You left your own wife crying in the doorway. Left your boy at the window. But sure, Frankie, let's talk about what people owe you. I go back to pacing. Limping, I mean. 3 limps from the door to the sink. 2 from the sink to the urinal. Turn. 3 limps back. My throat is sore. The note is still on the floor by the toilet. Still unfolding in the bad light. The faucet is still dripping. The dark behind the mirror is still the wrong kind of dark. And somewhere out there, Diane is either still crying or she's stopped. And Bryce is doing what Bryce always does. Going quiet, going small, folding himself down to the size of something that won't be in the way. I taught him that. Not on purpose. You sure about that, Frankie? You sure it wasn't on purpose? The grunting stopped. And then I hear it. From the other side of the door, a long, wet breath. Part 3. I didn't sleep. I'll argue that till the day that I die. You can't sleep in a place like this. Not really, at least. But something like sleep must have taken me anyway. Some joyless cousin of sleep, because when I opened my eyes, the bathroom was washed in thin morning light, leaking down through the little window. Like someone had poured a glass of milk over the thing. Second day here. My neck aches. My back aches. My broken hand aches. My good hand, which stopped being good sometime last night, aches. The tile has smoothed its image into the side of my face. I can feel the grit on my skin. And the grunting and breathing stopped for a little while. For one stupid second, I let myself think it was all just a Campari hallucination. I mean, I did drink more than I planned. That my brain cooked up something crazy because my nerves were shot. A bad dream you can't fully remember. But now I hear it again. Breathing. Just pipes. I whisper. Air in the pipes. The whole building's probably... No, it ain't, Frankie. Pipes don't got lungs. I back up until my calves hit the urinal. I keep my eyes on the knob like it might soften under a hand I can't see and turn. The breathing is longer this time, a wet intake that catches in the throat with a small click before whistling back out through the nose. It's the sound of someone who smokes too much and sleeps too little. It's the sound of a face pressed right up against the other side of the wood. I hold my own breath. My lungs start to burn. In, click, whistle, out. In, click, whistle, out. Right there, inches away, separated by cheap plywood and 30 years of paint. I get on my hands and knees. My body just does it. Moves low. Tiles biting into my kneecaps. Broken hand throbbing. Crawling until my nose is almost touching the door. Until I can smell the dust trapped in the wood grain. I listen. The breathing hitches and stops. The person on the other side is listening back. He knows you're there, Frankie. He can smell the fear leaking off you. I raise my good hand. Extend one finger. Tap. Just one tap. Just once. Just a test. Nothing. The faucet drips. My blood rushes loud in my ears. And then from the other side, tap. A knuckle on wood. Same spot with the same force. I swallow dry air. Hello? It comes out as a croak. No one answers. Just the breathing again. In, click, whistle, out. I drag myself back to the sink cabinet and sit with my back against it. I'm not alone. I keep turning that over. I'm not alone, which should mean something, which should be some kind of relief, and it isn't. It's worse. It's just worse. Being alone just meant I was trapped. Being here with something that breathes and taps and will not speak, that means I'm being watched or toyed with. Or it means whoever it is can't speak, Frankie. You ever think of that? I look at the sink. Gather, swell, detach, fall. The thirst has changed. Yesterday it was a scratch in my throat, something I couldn't brush off and pretend didn't exist. But now it's a living thing that has climbed down my gullet and is squeezing my stomach with both hands. My tongue feels too big for my mouth. My lips are cracking. Little fissures that open when I move my jaw and taste like blood when I run my tongue across them. I look at the note on the floor by the toilet. Don't drink the water. Screw you, I tell it. You don't know. You ain't here. But they were here, weren't they? They left the jacket. They left the note. They left that piss stain on the floor. They left everything behind. And they're not here anymore, Frankie. And you might want to think real hard about what that means. I grab the edge of the sink and haul myself up. The right knee pops, and it's a sound like a bone breaking. Wrong, and I ride the nausea with my teeth clamped and my eyes watering. I don't cup the water in my hands this time. I don't want to feel it on my skin. That felt too civilized, and civilization checked out around the time the door locked. And I realized, really sat with the fact that I might not see Diane again. Don't lie, Frankie. You weren't ever going back, no way, no how. I bend my head, put my mouth directly under the tap, and I twist the handle. The water hits the back of my throat like a tidal wave. Cold, shockingly, bitingly cold. And I gulp it down, swallowing air and water and spit. Choking, sputtering, drinking like a dog, drinking like a man in a desert. I drink until my stomach distends and aches, until the cold makes my teeth hurt and my brain seize. I pull back, gasping. Water drips off my chin and onto my collar. Oh, God, I say. Ah, sweet baby Jesus. It's the best thing I've ever tasted. Then the aftertaste hits. It blooms in the back of my tongue a second later. It tastes like the way the bog water smelled when I took the kid fishing. I wipe my mouth. I look at the water swirling down the drain. It was no longer brown, which was a sort of relief. But as I watch it swirl away, the room seemed to stretch, just for a hair. I blink and the sink looks normal again. Or, no, not normal. Not exactly. The drain spun too long, like the whirlpool was taking its sweet time. As if the water didn't want to go, as if it was being swallowed by something deeper than just rusted pipes. The chill in my stomach turns. Something thick drags itself down behind my ribs. Oh, hell, I whisper. Shouldn't have drank it, Frankie. Boy, you shouldn't have done that. I back away from the sink and hit the wall. I don't remember it being that close. I press my palm to the tile and try to breathe slowly, the way the doctor told me when the palpitation started 3 years ago, and I told Diane it was nothing, and she didn't believe me, and she was right. I close my eyes, I open them again. The grout lines between the tiles are curving inward, or they were always curving, and I'm only now seeing it, bowing towards the center of the room. I put my hand to my forehead. Hot or cold, I genuinely cannot tell which. Sit down. I say it out loud. Just sit. It's water. It can't be. But instead of sitting, I grab the trash can again to try to see outside. I needed to see outside, to get someone's attention so they could let me out. I dragged it across the tile and the wheel screamed the whole way. Loud enough that I almost stopped due to the pain in my ears. But only almost. I pushed it against the wall and climbed up. I steadied myself and went to jump, but the plastic lid bowed under my weight, and my foot slipped. I came down hard, and the right knee twisted sideways, and then it buckles out from under me like cardboard, pain detonating up both thighs, and the room swims, steadies, swims. I'm sweating. I'm shaking cold. The distinction between the two has stopped meaning anything. I try to crawl back toward the stall, and I cannot move my right leg. Have to drag it. Dead weight. Stiffening. The joint swelling around whatever I did to it when I tried to jump for the window. And the pain is... Oh God, it's locking. The knee is locking up. It won't bend. It won't bend, and the pain is white. It's searing, climbing up my thigh like fire, like acid, and I can't move. I can't even try without the whole leg seizing up, cramping, screaming, and what if it's permanent? What if I tore something that doesn't heal? What if I'm stuck in here with a dead leg and... The thought snaps off. The room swims, then steadies, then swims again. Black. Part 4. I come to with my cheek pressed against the tile, tasting grout. My mouth is open and drool drips from my chin onto the floor beneath me. How long? Couldn't have been that long. The light is still doing the same death-rattling flicker. The faucet is still... Gather, swell, detach, fall. I push myself upright using the good hand, the good leg, the good everything else I have left that isn't broken or close to it, and I slump against the stall door. My right knee screams when I try to shift any part of my body. Something went very wrong in there during the fall. Something very, very wrong. You're falling apart, Frankie, piece by piece. Nobody's coming to put Humpty Dumpty back together again. The sound behind the door has gone still again. No breathing, no tapping. God, the quiet is worse than the noise was. Quiet means waiting, and what in the hell is it waiting for? For you to get thirsty again, for you to get dumb again. I swallow, my throat is already dry again. I run my tongue against the roof of my mouth and it rasps. Scrapes, like the water I drank didn't quench anything, just wrung me out like a sponge and left me emptier than before. I look at my hands. The good one is shaking visibly. The broken one just throbs, matching the faucet's drip. Gather, swell, detach, fall. Gather, swell, detach, fall. The panic won't stay down. I squeeze my eyes shut and try to breathe slowly, try to talk it back from the ledge. But the panic is tenacious. It reminds me of this waterproofing salesman who used to come round Jose Grove when I was a kid. Gil Guntherson. You could slam the door in Gil's face. You could turn the porch light off. You could threaten to let the dog loose. Call the sheriff. Hell, you could threaten to shoot him square in the jaw. And Gil would just stand there, sweating through his cheap polyester suit, smiling that sleazy smile, waiting for you to crack. That's the panic. It's Gil Guntherson, just sweating on, pooling in my brain, and thinking about sweat. God, am I sweating? A cold and slimy filth like I've been dripped in lard. Makes me think about the summer of '94. A week in August, I picked up some cash working off the books for Levesque's septic company, the Honey Wagon it was called, though there was nothing sweet about it. It was 104 degrees in the shade, a heat that sat on your chest like a fat aunt, and Levesque had taken a job in Briarwood at the estate of some textile heir who hadn't pumped his tank since Truman fired MacArthur. I remember the smell before anything else, before the truck stopped rolling, before we even popped the lid. You could taste it, and it wasn't just crap, let me tell you. Crap is honest. Crap is biological. This was something else. This was a fermentation, a soup of bleach and drain cleaner and human waste and lye that had been cooking underground for God knows how long. Levesque, a man who had no nose left to speak of and smoked unfiltered Camels while he worked, handed me the pry bar. "Pop her open, Frankie." I jammed the iron under the concrete lid and I heaved, boots slipping in perfectly cut briarwood grass, and the seal broke with a sound like a sloppy kiss. Schwuck. And the lid slid back. I didn't throw up. I was proud of that. I really was, but I wanted to. There was a solid 3-inch crust of gray-brown matter hardened over the top of the tank like the skin on pudding. It rippled when the light hit it, and right in the center of that crust, stuck fast, was a pristine white plastic comb. Just a comb. Probably dropped down some toilet in the 50s by a kid who never thought about it again. I stood there staring at it. I couldn't stop. I was thinking about the journey it had taken, from a marble bathroom counter that probably smelled like lavender, down the porcelain throat, through the dark twisting pipes, all the way down to this tomb, and it was still white, still perfect, floating on top of a literal ocean of rot, refusing to sink, refusing to be stained, refusing to be taken. I remember wanting to reach down and pluck it out, not to keep it, Christ, no, just to see if I could separate the clean thing from the dirty thing without falling in myself. "Quit staring at the turds, kid," Levesque barked. "Hook up the hose. We got sucking to do." I hooked up the hose. I spent 6 hours inhaling that air, 6 hours listening to the slurp, chug, slurp of the pump eating through the crust. When we were done, when the tank was empty and the check was signed, I went to the spigot on the side of the rich man's house to wash my hands. The water came out ice cold. I drank it straight from the tap, just like I did at that sink. Mouth under the metal, gulping until my belly was tight as a war drum, and for a second it tasted like heaven, like salvation. But on the drive home, sitting in the cab of the honey wagon with the windows down, I burped, and it tasted like the tank, like the gray crust and the bleach and the rot, as if the air I'd been breathing all day had saturated my blood, as if the water had just rehydrated the sewage coating my throat. I pulled over and retched into a ditch. But the taste didn't go away, stayed with me for a week. Every time I drank water, I tasted the crust. Every time I swallowed, I felt that white plastic comb bobbing somewhere in my stomach. And you taste it now, don't you, Frankie? I do. I taste that comb. The water from the bathroom sink is sitting in my gut, heavy and sloshing, and the aftertaste is rising back up my esophagus. Not the septic tank, exactly. Though it's got hints of that, yeah. It tastes like wet fur. Shouldn't have drank it, I mutter. I squeeze my eyes shut and try to push the image of the white comb out of my head. But the image changes. It's not a comb anymore. It's a hand. A small, unformed hand, floating on the surface of the black water in my stomach. I gag, a dry heave that bends me double, but nothing comes up. Just air. Just the taste of wet fur. And then the breathing starts again from the other side of the door. It sounds more like a machine now. An EKG hissing behind the wood. I push myself upright, back sliding up the stall until I'm sitting straight, legs splayed out on the checkerboard floor. The movement makes my head swim, but I ignore it. Something new has arrived, louder and more demanding than the thirst or the fear. The itch. It starts in my fingertips, the good ones, of course, and crawls up my wrists, tightens the skin around my jaw. I pat my shirt pocket. Flat. I pat my pants. Nope. Nothing but car keys and a gum wrapper. I need a smoke. I need a smoke so bad my teeth hurt. Other things hurt too. All of me hurts. But the need for a smoke has climbed on top of the rest of the pain and is now running the circus. My eyes go to the jacket on the floor by the toilet. Check it again, Frankie. You checked the inside pocket. You didn't check the insides. Maybe our New Hampshire friend had the same filthy habit as you. I don't hesitate. I crawl over to it, dragging my bad leg, moving like a crab. I've checked every pocket on this thing like it's got a winning lottery ticket in it. Outer pockets, inside pocket, even turned it upside down and shook it, but I never checked the bones of it. The denim is stiff with road grime and something that might be bird crap. I bunch the front of it in my good hand and start feeling at the lining with my fingers, digging along the seams, pressing, feeling for anything that doesn't belong. "Don't hold out on me," I whisper. "Be a pal. Come on, be a..." My fingernail catches a loose thread near the inside hem. I pull. The thread pulls back. The seam opens just enough to make a dark little mouth in the lining, and inside it, I feel a crinkle. My heart jumps so hard it makes the room tilt. I hook 2 fingers into the tear and dig around, fishing blind inside the jacket's guts, and then I pull something free, a soft pack of Pall Malls. Crushed and bent nearly in half, sweat soft and lived in, but they're here. I shake it, not empty. "Thank you," I wheeze, and the wheeze turns into a laugh that turns into a hacking cough. I fish out a cigarette, crook it into a V shape, tobacco shedding from the tip, but smokable, and I stick it between my lips. The taste of unlit tobacco is the single most real sensation I've had in 2 days. Then I go back to the tear. If someone hid cigarettes, they hid the fire too. I reach inside again, feeling deeper this time, and my fingers close around something small and hard. Pink disposable Bic. Almost empty. I flick it. Sparks. No flame. Nada. I flick it again. Sparks. No flame. Nada. "You piece of..." I shout. "You're getting desperate, Franklin." Third time, shielding it with my broken hand. The knuckles flaring as I curl them into a cup, but I don't care. I need this. I need to fill my lungs with something that isn't mildew, crap, and fear. Flick. A tiny blue-orange flame coughs to life. I lean in and suck hard. The tip of the Pall Mall goes cherry red and I inhale, and the smoke hits the back of my throat like a freight train, harsh and full body, and I hold it there and let it burn and let it coat the taste of the wet fur and the Campari, and I blow a long gray cloud up toward the ceiling. There it is. That's the stuff. Now you're a king again. I lean my head back against the toilet tank. The nicotine rush makes me lightheaded, but it also makes me feel mean, gives me my edge back. I'm not a trapped animal anymore. I'm a guy having a smoke and a John. I'm Franklin Marin, and I don't take crap from anyone. "Hey," I shout at the door, my voice feeling stronger now, raspy with smoke. "You hear that? I'm having a smoke on the John. Getting comfortable. You think you can wait me out? I got nowhere to be, pal. I got all night." Wait. The sound doesn't change. I laugh. It's a jagged and ugly sound. I reach back into the jacket. If New Hampshire had smokes, maybe he had something else. A flask, maybe. I check the outer pockets again anyway. Empty. I check the inside pocket again, even though I already know better. Then I go back to the jacket's guts. I dig 2 fingers in and pull out a cracked leather wallet. I flip it open. Don't look at the ID first. I go straight for the cash slot. 1 $5 bill. Cheap, I mutter, and shove the bill into my own pocket. Then I look at the license. I squint in the flickering light. On, off, on. I squint harder. The cigarette falls out of my mouth. It lands on my thigh, burns through my slacks, sears the skin, and I don't feel it. I just stare at the little laminated card. That isn't my birthday, and the photo isn't me. At least, not yet. It's an older man, gray beard with hollowed out cheeks and eyes like 2 cigarette burns. A man who looks like he's been starving for a very, very long time. But the name is right. And the address? It's correct. I throw the wallet. It hits the floor and lands open, that starving face staring up at me from the checkerboard tile. No, I whisper. That ain't right. I scramble backward until I hit the sink cabinet. I look at the jacket in my hands and throw it too. It hits the wall with a soft whump and slides down. It's a trick, Frankie. Someone's messing with you. The bartender. They stole your wallet and made a fake. But my wallet is in my back pocket. I can feel the lump of it. I reach back, pull it out, and open it. My license is there. My younger face. Same name. Same address. I look at the one on the floor. I look at the one in my hand. Wait. The sound outside the door stops. I hold my breath and look up. I grip the sink edge with my good hand and rise using my left leg, and the bathroom seems to shrink around me. Walls drawing in, floor stretching downward, ceiling swinging low, and I duck, and when I straighten up, the ceiling is exactly where it's always been, 8 feet, water-stained tile with the flickering bulb. Except the bulb is on the left now. Wasn't it on the right before? I remember because it flickered in the mirror. You're losing it, Frankie. The bulb didn't move. You moved. The whole room is spinning and you're the only thing standing still. I press my palms to my temples. The cigarette is still burning on the floor where it fell. I watch the smoke rise. It bends midair, hooks left, then folds back on itself like a snake eating its own tail. I look at the door. The brass knob is gone. The wood is smooth where it used to be, as if there was never a knob at all. No, I say. No, there was a... I tried the knob. I broke my hand on that door. There was a... I lunge forward. My bad leg gives out halfway and I collapse against the door, cheek pressing into the wood, and I can feel it. The breathing on the other side, the heat of it, like a mouth pressed right up against the panel, exhaling slow and steady. Who are you? I whisper into the door. The breathing stops, and then from the other side, who are you? I shove myself back so hard I fall, land on my ass, broken hand cracking against the tile, and the pain is white. The pain is immediate, and I curl around it, fetal, rocking, gasping, tears running hot down my face. When I look up, the door has a knob again, a different knob, glass or crystal maybe, faceted, like something from a fancy hotel or a funeral home, and inside it, suspended in the glass like a fly in amber, is a tooth. A fat, human molar. I stare at it, it stares back. That's your tooth, Frankie. The one you lost in '09 when you slipped on the ice outside the mill. You spit it into your hand and just stood there like an idiot, blood on your chin, thinking, I am falling apart. You remember that? Screw you, I still got all my teeth. I run my tongue over them. All there, all 32. Minus the wisdom ones they yanked in the service. But I look at the crystal knob with the tooth inside it and I start to remember. Not all at once. Memory doesn't work that way. Not in here. Not anymore. It comes in pieces like pulling a nail out of rotten wood. The smell first, ammonia and pee, and that under-smell of wet fur. Then the sound. The drip. Always that drip. Then the feeling. My hand on a door. Pounding. My voice hoarse from yelling. I've been here before. No, Frankie, that's the water talking. You just got here 2 nights ago. You came from the cruiser. From Diane. From... But the memory keeps on spooling and I can't stop it. I see myself, younger, 30-something, standing in this exact spot, staring at this exact sink. saying something to the door, something important. "I'll go back," younger Frank says. "I swear to Christ, just let me out and I'll go back. I'll fix it." And a voice, not my voice, not yet my voice, but a voice whispers back, "You won't." The younger Frank drank the water, and younger Frank wrote the note, and younger Frank left the jacket, and younger Frank walked out of this bathroom, got in his car, drove away, and forgot. Completely. As if the bathroom had reached into his skull and plucked the memory out clean as the wisdom's. But he didn't go back. He drove to Nebraska or Iowa or Cancun. It didn't matter where, because he never arrived anywhere. And one day, a year later, or 10, he got hungry or thirsty or just plain tired, and he pulled off at a diner he'd never seen before but somehow recognized, not even 5 miles from home. And he walked into a bathroom with "Gents" stenciled on the door, and here you are again, Frankie. Right back where you started. How many times now? 3, 5, a dozen? "No," I whisper. "I don't remember any of them, but I'm already looking at my hands. The broken one is worse. The fingers have gone ash gray, and the good hand..." I turn it over. I look at the palm. There's a scar there, a white scar, faint, but it's there, running from the base of my thumb to my wrist. I don't remember getting that scar. Part 5. Or... I turn my hand over again. Back, front, back. The scar is there. It's always been there. White and thin and running from the base of my thumb to my wrist in a clean line that I have never once in 50 years of living inside this body been able to explain. I have a story for every other scar. The knuckle I split on a locker door in 92. The burn on my forearm from a kitchen grease fire in 96. Every scar has a story. This one doesn't. It does, Frankie. You just told yourself a different one. I look at the shards of red plastic on the floor, the broken stoplight lens from the window ledge, the one that's been sitting up there since I woke up in here, the one I knocked down when I tried to... That was someone else, I say aloud. The words don't land right. They never do when you say something out loud that you already know just isn't true. That was you, Frankie, last time. Or the time before that. You cut your hand on the glass just as you broke it on the door. You keep hurting yourself the same way, over and over, because you never learn, Frankie boy. No, just messing with me. You never learn. I said stop. I grab the sides of my head and I squeeze and I scream. A real scream. The kind that fills your whole chest cavity first before it ever comes out. Until saliva floods my mouth and my vision goes black at the peripheries and I have to let go just to stay conscious. The bathroom keeps existing around me, uncaring and as patient as a headstone. My breath comes back in pieces. I wipe my mouth with the back of my good hand. It's shaking. Has been shaking for... God, how long now? Hours? Maybe longer? Maybe it's been shaking my whole life and I only just noticed because there's nothing left to do in here but notice things. You're losing track of time, Frankie. That's what the water does. Time gets slippery, slides right through your fingers like crap through a goose. I finish for it. I laugh and it sounds wrong. More of a wheeze or a gag or something a sick animal makes when it's trying not to keel over and die. I look at my hands. The broken one is much worse. The swelling's gone down some, which should be a good sign, but it isn't. Because the color underneath is all wrong now, turning a deeper gray purple. That shade of old bad meat. I try to wiggle my pinky. Nothing. I try again. I send the signal down deliberately, The way you do when you're concentrating so hard on a physical task, you can almost feel the individual nerves like wires. Move. Move, you son of a... Move. Nada. It's dead, Frankie. That finger's dead. Rest of the hand'll follow. Gangrene sets in fast when you're sitting in your own piss. Give it another day and you'll start smelling it. That rot. You know the one. I do. I worked a double at Jose General in '05, maybe '06. The years blur together when I try to look at them directly, mopping the third floor. It was August, specifically. The end of August, so it was the kind of heat that doesn't quit at night anymore. They wheeled someone in from a car accident on Route 9. Someone who'd been sitting in a vehicle for 3 days before anyone noticed the car pulled off in the breakdown lane. 3 days in August. The smell got into the ventilation system, into the walls, into the fibers of my uniform, and I drove home with the windows down the whole way, and it didn't matter. Diane made me strip on the porch, made me hose off in the backyard, in the dark like a dog, before she'd let me cross the threshold, and even then, she kept a window open. I remember standing in the backyard in the dark, wet from the hose, watching the yellow light in the kitchen window, and thinking about how far away it looked, just how small everything seemed. That's not the smell you're thinking about, though, is it, Frankie? I clench my jaw. It is. It isn't. You're thinking about the other one. That one from the trunk. There was no trunk. The cruiser, summer of '05. You remember, Frank. You remember what you put in there. You remember how long it took before you... I press the heels of both hands against my eyes until I see stars. There was nothing in that trunk. I shout. Nothing. I didn't. But you did. And you remember the drive. How long did it take, Frank? 2 hours, 3, all the way out to the quarry with the windows down, trying to air it out, trying to convince yourself it was just roadkill you'd driven past, just something dead and rotten on the highway that had gotten stuck in the undercarriage. Shut up. Stop. Can't stop, won't stop. The rock's at the bottom. You know how deep it is out there? Past the swimming area, out where the signs say, no diving, deep water. You know what's down there. It was dark. My voice is a whisper now. I couldn't. It was dark and I couldn't see what I was. My breath is coming in more rapidly now. My chest feels too tight and I can see it. Can see myself standing at the edge in the dark. The splash so small, so quiet in the loudness of the night, swallowed up by all the black water. No, that was someone else. That was a dream, or that was... You wore gloves, the yellow ones, Diane's kitchen gloves from under the sink. You remember putting them on, Frank. You remember how the rubber smelled. You drove back and you threw them in a dumpster behind the hospital. Behind your hospital, Frankie. Where you mopped floors and told yourself lies about being a decent man. A good man. And then you went home. And you told her you'd been working late. I was working late. The words come out flat and dead. I had a double. I was mopping the third. The third floor, yeah, you've said that. You've been saying it for over 20 years. Said it so many times you almost got there. Almost made it all the way to believing it. But sometimes late at night when Diane's lying there pretending to be asleep, and you're staring at the ceiling, you smell it again, don't you? That trunk smell. That 3 days in August smell. My good hand moves to my throat. The air in here feels wrong and I can't catch my breath. It was an accident, I say. Was it? It was. Which time? My eyes snap open. Which what? You heard me, Mr. Marin. Which time was an accident? The first one, or the second? Or was it the third? The fourth? The fifth? There wasn't. There was one. There was only ever one, and it was an accident. It was dark and I couldn't... The splash was small, wasn't it? The air goes out of me. You always think about the splash, but not the drive or the gloves, not the weight of it. Though that surprised you too, didn't it? Just how light. You think about the splash because it was small, because you expected something bigger, and the smallness of it was the thing you couldn't. The thing you'd never been able to. Stop. The second one was quieter, though. Stop. The third one? You didn't even get out of the car for. You just opened the trunk and... Stop it. Stop. There was only ever... The shoes, Frank. I make a sound I have never heard myself make before in my entire life. Something that isn't a word, but rather comes from a place in me I have spent 30 years building walls around. You keep the shoes. Did you know that? Every time you come back here, the water shows me the shoes. Little things. 2 pairs with Velcro straps. One with the laces tied in a double knot, the way a mother would do it. Still in the trunk of the cruiser. In that locked metal box under the spare tire. You told Diane you kept the jumper cables in. You remember exactly where you put them. And you don't know why you kept them. And I think, if you were honest, if you could be honest about even one thing in your miserable life, you would know exactly why you kept them. I'm on my hands and knees on the tile, and I do not remember getting here. I can feel the cold of the floor through my palms, and my dead hand is screaming and I cannot breathe. I cannot get air in past whatever is sitting on my chest. Whatever has been sitting on my chest since 2005 or 2006 or whenever it was the first time I drove out of the quarry with Diane's yellow kitchen gloves on my hands and told myself lies in the dark. They were already... The sentence collapses. Go on, Frank. Finish it. Just once. Say what you did. Not to me, I already know. Say it to yourself. Say it out loud and proud in a room where there's nobody left to protect you from it. I open my mouth, but nothing comes out. 50 years and not a single word comes out. That's what I thought. And then, silence. The faucet drips, gather, swell, detach, fall. I am on the floor of a bathroom in a diner I don't remember pulling into, with a dead hand and a scar I can't explain, in a locked metal box under a spare tire, and I have been a lot of things in my life. A son, a husband, a father, a janitor, a coward. But I have never said the word out loud. Not once. Not in 50 years. I don't say it now. And from the other side of the door comes a sound I haven't heard before. Weeping. Quiet. Decades old weeping. The sound of a person who ran out of hope so long ago that they don't even remember what hope felt like. I know the voice. I have always known the voice. I press my back against the wall and I pull my knees to my chest. And I sit there while the person on the other side of the door cries, and I do not move. And I do not speak. And the faucet drips in the silence. Gather. Swell. Detach. Fall. Part 6. The final part. I know the voice because it's mine, not my voice as it is now. All ragged and cigarette ruined and 50 years of crappy decisions worn into the grit of it all. But my voice from before, the voice I had when I was young enough to still believe that wanting to be a decent man was the same thing as being one. Younger me, 30-something me. The one who stood in this exact spot and made a promise to a door, and then broke it so completely that he forgot he'd ever made it. He's been in here since then. The thoughts all arrived the way the worst of them always do, as a fact you've known for a long time and have simply chosen to ignore. He's been in here since the last time, since the time before that. Every version of me who ever walked through that door and drank the water, and could find his way out has been here, stacking up on the other side of that wood like sediment, like the gray crust on Levesque's septic tank, adding another layer every time the man on this side of the door decides to get back in his car and drive away and forget. I did this. Me. I did this to myself. Came back and came back and came back because I never actually left. You can't leave a place you never stopped running from, and I have been running from the quarry and the yellow kitchen gloves and the sound of the black water when it's swallowing something. And I have been running for over 30 years. And the running looked like Nebraska and Iowa and a diner off Route 9, and another diner, and another. And every time I ended up here, right in this room, in front of this mirror, looking at a man I almost recognize, but will never be able to. I'm sorry, I say. And it wasn't even to the thing behind the door, but to them all. To the version of me who stood here before with his hand bleeding from the stoplight lens and wrote, "Don't drink the water," on a piece of paper and left it in a jacket, knowing he wouldn't remember why, knowing the next man in this room would look at it and hesitate and drink it anyway, because that is what I do. I read the warnings and then decide I know better. I decide my crap doesn't stink after all. To my wife, who has been lying awake for God knows how many years in a house I used to live in, wondering if the man she married ever existed, or if she invented him out of loneliness or just sheer bad luck. To my son, God, my son, who is at least 10 and always will be in my head, who looked up at me from the back seat the last morning I was a father and said, "Bye, Dad." And I said something back. I must have said something back, but I cannot for the life of me remember what it was. I just hope it was enough. But I know it wasn't. The weeping on the other side of the door goes quiet. The light in here changes. Finally stops its flickering. Hold steady for the first time since I woke up on this floor with grout on my cheek and no memory of how I got here. The bulb burns clean and still, and the door opens. It just swings inward on its hinges, as if it had never been locked at all. Like it was always only waiting for me to stop throwing myself at it and just stand there. And the air from the other side hits my face, that cool diner air, the specific smell of every American diner that has ever existed. I stand in the doorway and look out at an empty dining room, empty booths, empty counter stools. A ceiling fan is turning overhead in a slow, useless circle. Through the glass plate windows, the parking lot is dark. My car is there, just where I left it, under the single working light in the lot. I walk toward it. My legs work, which surprises me. I expected them not to. Expected the bad knee to give out in the doorway. Expected to spend whatever is left of my life face down on sticky linoleum. But the knee holds, and I cross the dining room, and I'm almost to the front door when my bad leg catches the leg of a counter stool I didn't see in the dark. I go down hard. Both hands out in front of me, pure reflex. And the right one, the broken one, the gray-purple zombie-looking one, takes the weight first, and the pain that comes back up through my arm is the kind that wipes the slate clean for a second. Nothing in my head but the sound of my own voice making a noise that isn't a word. I wrench sideways as I fall and catch myself on the edge of the counter instead, my good hand slamming flat against the formica. And there's something on it. A coffee mug someone left handle out at the edge, and the handle catches the meat of my palm and opens it up clean. And I know before I even look at it that it's bleeding. I can feel the hot crawl of it on my wrist. I lie on the floor for a moment. Both hands are ruined now. One dead, one bleeding. Probably some kind of poetry in that. I push myself up with my elbows, get to my knees and then my feet. I look at my good hand. The cut is deep, running diagonal across the palm, already sheeting red. I press it to my shirt without thinking. Add it to the list of things to deal with in the morning. The list is getting really long. I push through the front door, and the night air hits me, and it is cold, and clean, and real. I stand in the parking lot for a moment, and I notice that I don't remember what I came in here for. I needed to use the restroom, I think. Yeah, long drive. Needed to stretch my legs. I look down at my hands. The right one is wrapped in what looks like an old shirt, tied off at the wrist. Fingers swollen and the wrong color, and the left one has blood on it, seeping through where I'm pressing my palm to my knees. I must have caught it on something on my way out. I should get both of them looked at. I was going somewhere. I was driving somewhere. I stand next to the car and try to find the shape of the thought, and it isn't there. That's just the hum of the highway somewhere beyond the trees and the cold. And my own breath fogging the air in small, pale clouds. I had a reason for being out here. There was something I was thinking about on the drive. Something important. Something about a house I used to know. A boy. I reach for it, but it slides away like trying to catch the drip before it detaches from the faucet. Gone. I get in the car. I drive. I don't know how long. The radio plays something I don't listen to, and then static, and then something else. The dark opens up ahead of me and closes in the rear view and opens up again. Pine trees and the occasional light from a house set back from the road. Lives I'll never know anything about. Whole worlds running parallel to mine with no idea I even exist. There's an exit sign I pass. There is, somewhere in me, an instinct that wants to take it. Wants to drive to a house I may or may not still have a key to. Wants to knock on a door at whatever hour this is and stand there in the dark and say something to the woman who opens it. I don't know what. Something. Something that starts with her name and ends with, I'm sorry, probably. But I pass the exit. I'm tired. That's the thing. I am so profoundly, structurally tired that the tiredness has stopped feeling like tiredness and started feeling like whole body fatigue. I need a drink, and then I need to sleep in a bed somewhere, and then I need to get these hands looked at in the morning, and then I'll think about that house. I think about everything in the morning when I'm not so tired. I always do my best thinking in the morning. I pull off at the next exit. The diner is a quarter mile from the highway, the kind of place that exists in every small town all across the world, with its big neon sign in the window and gravel in the lot. A pickup truck I don't recognize. An old sedan. A closed sign in the window of the barber shop next door. I sit in the car for a moment. The name of the diner is something I don't look at. The neon in the window is a color I don't register. I need to use the restroom anyway. It's been a long drive. I get out of the car. Inside, it smells like everything I expected. Beer and fried food and decades of spilled drinks absorbed into old wood. Honest smells. The smells of ordinary people having an ordinary night. A woman at the bar turns to look at me when I come in. The bartender, young, with a face I probably won't remember by morning, looks up and nods. His eyes drop to my hands. A flicker of something. He doesn't say anything about it. Restroom? I ask. Back of the house, he says. Already looking back down, past the jukebox. Hang a right. I nod and start walking. The jukebox plays a song I recognize from somewhere I can't place. The hallway past it is narrow, the kind that forces you to turn sideways if someone's coming from the other direction. And at the end of it, there are two doors. One on the left, one at the end of the hall. The one at the end of the hall has a word on it. Gents. I put my hand on the knob. The cut in my palm presses against the cold brass. It stings, but I turn it. The door opens, and that was 2 days ago. Or 3. I'm not really sure anymore. The light has been flickering and the faucet won't stop dripping. My right hand has gone a color that hands aren't supposed to go, and my left one is crusted shut where the cut stopped bleeding sometime yesterday. The door doesn't open. I've tried the window. I've tried screaming. There's a jacket on the floor that isn't mine. Some old denim with a patch on the shoulder that says something I can't read in this god-awful light. And in the inside pocket there's a folded piece of paper. I haven't opened it yet. I don't know why I haven't opened it. I think I'm afraid of what it says. Earlier today, I started hearing breathing from the other side of the door. I'm posting this from my phone. The signal is bad and getting worse. I don't know if this will go through, but I don't know if it matters. I'm so thirsty. There's a sink and the faucet just started running on its own. But I'm not going to drink from it. Sure you won't. You never do. When I was young, camping was the one thing that everyone in my family enjoyed. Every year we'd drive out to some national park, split into groups, and make a game out of seeing which of us could reach the other end of the park first. No matter the weather, no matter the terrain, we always had the time of our lives. But when I turned 10, my grandfather suggested a new location for our annual trip, one that none of us had ever heard of. Lake Neroos National Park, Oregon. I'd camp there all the time when I was younger, Gramps told me, as we packed for the journey. There's no tourists around this time of year, nobody to get in the way of the fun. It'll be a real adventure. None of us knew anything about Lake Neroos. It wasn't on any map we could find, nor was there any record of it even existing. But Gramps somehow had maps of the area ready to go, and he'd never steered us wrong before. So, all 8 of us took the drive to Oregon, winding along endless byways and mountain passes, until we finally parked on the side of a lonely dirt road. At the very edge of a huge stretch of dense forest, beyond the trees lay a vast, becalmed lake with waters black as oil. As always, we divided up the family into teams and set off along different routes to see who could reach the northernmost campsite first for the big fireside party. Grandpa teamed up with my parents for the easternmost route. My older brother Sebastian teamed up with Aunt Marcy on a northerly route along the shores of the lake, and I was teamed up with my eldest sister Nina and her boyfriend Jason as they made their way west. Once we'd collected our compasses, supplies, walkie-talkies, and maps, we marched off into the forest, ready to rendezvous at the north end of the lake. However, about half an hour into the trip, I realized that my map was slightly different from the others. Where Nina and Jason's copies were showing straightforward locations and distances, mine had been graffitied. Seemingly random areas had been circled and labeled beasts, gluttons, secluses, tricksters, and apexes. I tried to tell Nina and Jason about it, but they weren't in the mood to listen. Nina was grumpy at having to play babysitter to me, and Jason was practically itching with impatience for the moment when he'd finally have some precious alone time with his girlfriend. So they ignored me as we marched uphill through the sparser end of the forest that bordered the western shore of Lake Neroos. That first night, we stopped right on the edge of the zone marked Beasts on my map, and after setting up the tents and cooking dinner, we went to bed early. Or rather, I went to bed early. Nina and Jason had plans for an after-dark walk through the forest ahead, but the map's warnings had spooked me, so I decided to stay behind. And while I slept, they went off to enjoy their privacy in the depths of the forest, inside the Beasts Zone. I dimly remember waking up later that night to see lights in the distance, accompanied by faint howls and barks. But once the glow and the noise faded, I drifted back to sleep almost immediately. In my defense, I was really tired. When Nina and Jason came back the next morning, I knew at once that something was wrong. They'd left shirt buttons undone, boots unlaced, jackets left hanging off one shoulder, and neither of them seemed to notice. I tried to ask what was wrong, but they struggled to even speak. Jason could only grunt, while Nina barely mumbled out a few vague sentences about what had happened. "Can't think," she mumbled. "Hurts to think. Saw lights in the forest. Lights gave something, but took something away." Whimpering, she staggered off, muttering under her breath. From what little I could hear, it sounded like she was reciting the alphabet, but she kept forgetting it. Still, the two of them tried to go about their morning routine, preparing breakfast and packing up the campsite, but Nina had trouble working the camping stove, despite being a veteran camper of more than a decade, while Jason could only clumsily paw at the tent pegs. I tried to help him, but the moment I got within arm's reach, Jason spun around and snarled at me like a wild animal, eyes flashing scarlet, his teeth lengthening into fangs. While I fell backwards in fear, Nina suddenly seemed to grow several feet taller, tearing her boots open and almost ripping through her shirt as she rounded on Jason, roaring at her boyfriend like an angry bear. Jason bowed his head and cowered, visibly shrinking until his clothes almost engulfed him, the hairless tail of a rat snaking out of his oversized jeans. My now giant sister then clumsily helped me to my feet, nuzzling my face like a mother dog worrying over a wounded puppy, lowing in concern as she checked me for injuries, clumsily promising to keep me safe. "We'll go hunt," she grunted. "We'll bring food. You stay. Not safe out there." And without another word, she shrugged out of her ruined clothes, shrank into the form of a hawk, and flew away. Behind her, Jason expanded into the shape of a fox, and took off after her with a garbled shout of, "Wanna come too?" I was left sitting alone by the tent, quivering in fear, calling for help on the walkie-talkie, without hearing a single response for the next half an hour. Eventually I set off in the opposite direction, hoping to track down one of the other family teams. I didn't know how they could help Nina and Jason, but I wasn't thinking that far ahead. All that mattered was finding help. As I left, I could see vultures watching from the branches above me, and all of them had human faces. It took hours for me to return to the starting point, and even longer to find Sebastian and Marcy's planned route, but I somehow managed to find their temporary camp on the eastern shore of Lake Nerus by 4 in the afternoon. The place was deathly silent, with no sign of my aunt and older brother to be found except for their untouched backpacks. About the only thing missing from their belongings was the spy novel that Sebastian had been reading. A quick look at the map confirmed that the two of them had made camp right between two of the marked zones. The Secluses zone in the forest bordering the eastern shore, and the Glutton zone in the shallows of the lake itself. Just as I was starting to panic, I remembered that Aunt Marcy had always liked to swim after a long journey. Hoping that she'd decided to take a dip in the lake to cool off from the hike, I made my way to the shore and called out to her at the top of my lungs, praying that at any moment I'd see Marcy striding out of the lake, maybe a little surprised to see me, but otherwise unchanged. Instead, I found myself alone on the shore except for a huge elk that had stopped to take a drink from the murky water. And then I caught a glimpse of movement around ankle height and saw something wiggling through the shallows towards the elk. At first I thought it was just a leech, up until I realized that it sported a tiny human head, no bigger than that of a Barbie doll. "Hungry," it shrilled at helium pitch. "Hungry." As I watched, the human-faced leech shot out of the water, fastened itself on the unsuspecting elk's flank, and began to feed, gorging itself on the animal's blood. And as it fed, it grew, bulging and swelling out of shape, expanding first by inches, then by feet. And as it grew, it sprouted long, rubbery arms that wrapped around the startled elk, anchoring itself in place and keeping the elk from shaking it off as the leech grew bigger and consumed even more of its blood. In a matter of seconds, the elk was dead and completely exsanguinated, and the leech was now roughly the size of a Nile crocodile, but it still wasn't finished eating. Reaching out with its improbably muscled arms, it shoved the carcass into its colossal jaws and swallowed it whole, instantly ballooning in size once again. Then the hippo-sized leech turned and finally noticed me, and in that moment, I recognized the now gigantic face of the leech. It was Aunt Marcy, transformed by her zone just like Nina and Jason, and yet differently. She was now what the map had called a glutton. Hungry. She boomed, her voice now a thunderous bass throb. Hungry. I didn't even bother trying to negotiate. I could tell from the way she was licking her chops that, unlike Nina, she didn't recognize me as anything other than lunch. So I turned and ran for the forest as fast as my feet could carry me. Fortunately, her newfound size made her slower, and though she transformed again and sprouted millipede legs to accelerate her along the rough ground, I had a head start. By the time she picked up serious speed, I'd already beaten her to the trees, where the forest was too dense for her to follow. Of course, I didn't realize that for several minutes, so on I ran, too terrified to remember that I was now sprinting into Secluse's territory. A few hundred yards past the tree line, I tripped and crashed headfirst to the ground. When I regained consciousness a few minutes later, something was jabbing me with a stick. Groaning, I looked up just in time to see something human-shaped drop the stick and leap backwards, springing onto the side of a tree and clinging to it like a frog. Now that I could see it clearly, I saw that it looked more akin to an octopus than anything else. It had writhing tentacles in place of fingers, disproportionately long arms, a bulging, pulpy skull, and enormous eyes with slot-like pupils. Also, it was holding a John Le Carre novel under one arm, straight from Sebastian's backpack. Judging by the leaf bookmark, the creature had been reading it recently, too. And that's how I finally realized that this thing, this Secluse, was my big brother. "Seb?" I whispered. Sebastian said nothing, but his tentacled fingers sharpened into blades as a silent warning not to get any closer. He was more intelligent than the other victims, but just like the others, something of himself had been stolen. All the showboating and bravado he'd been known for and admired for was gone. In their place was left only suspicion and fear. As I watched, he tucked the book in a hollow at the trunk of the tree and began inching backwards into the branches until he was well and truly out of reach. Then he began to change, his skin rippling as it shifted to match the texture of the bark, limbs and skull flattening against the trunk of the tree until they were almost two-dimensional. He even sprouted a few branches of his own, complete with real leaves. "Please, Seb, talk to me. Where are the others? What's happening?" The slot-pupiled eyes glared down at me for a moment. Then they too vanished, leaving him as just another part of the tree. As I later learned, Secluses are very shy creatures. They don't like being seen, either by predators or by their prey. You might wonder why, if that's the case, Sebastian bothered poking me with a stick. I like to think he was acting on some last shred of human feeling for me, checking to make sure I was okay. Then again, maybe he just wanted to check to see if I was dead before he started eating me. Out of ideas, I went on walking, hoping that I could finally find help if I went far enough. Eventually my route snaked out into the northernmost end of Lake Nerus. Out here, there was no shoreline, only a jagged maze of rocks and pinnacles almost as tall as the trees. and north of that, a stretch of bare hills jutting out from the surrounding forest. On the map, the pinnacles had been marked as trickster territory, and the hills belonged to the apexes, and getting anywhere near them would be incredibly dangerous. But the camping ground where we were supposed to meet was situated right on the edge of two areas, and this might be the only chance I'd have to finding my parents and Grandpa. By then, it was getting dark. Making my way out of Secluse territory had taken about 2 hours, and the sun was plunging rapidly out of view, and I really didn't want to find out just how many of these shapeshifters liked to hunt at night. So, when I caught a glimpse of Dad's telltale orange jacket through the trees ahead, I put on an extra burst of speed, hoping the camping ground was only a few yards beyond, and that I'd be safe there with Mom and Dad until we could call for help. But before I could reach him, Dad walked off, vanishing behind the trees to his left. Baffled, I followed, sprinting around the corner ahead, only to find that Dad had walked off yet again. Now he was heading into trickster territory. I immediately shouted, trying to get his attention, but no matter how loud I screamed or how urgently I tried to warn him, Dad just didn't seem to hear me. In desperation, I galloped after him, sprinting wildly towards the pinnacles with all the speed I could muster. And then, less than 5 feet away from me, Dad finally turned. He was smiling. But then, that's far too short and simple a word to describe the hideous grin he wore in that moment. Real human smiles don't literally stretch from ear to ear, and they usually don't sport long, needle-sharp fangs. And his eyes were no longer their usual murky brown, but a gleaming, luminous gold. As I skidded to a halt, Dad changed. His body shifted into a dazzling display of transformation, sprouting giant feathery wings from his shoulders, his body stretching and bulging ludicrously as he took on the shapes of cartoon characters. His head suddenly a blurring collage of faces from everyone in our family, including me. His skin blushing with lurid shapes of color from neon purple to radioactive blue. All of it happening so quickly that my eyes struggled to make sense of it. Too late, I realized that the performance was a distraction, and I turned to run, but in that moment, Mom swooped in and knocked me off my feet, sending me crashing to the ground. I landed heavily on my back, dazed and unable to do much else apart from stare up at the darkening sky as Mom descended on her own set of enormous wings. She too was smiling that same impossible Cheshire cat grin, her eyes gleaming metallic gold in the fading light. These were tricksters, I realized, and they'd lured me into a trap. Together, she and Dad grabbed me by the arms and began dragging me towards the distant hills of the Apex zone. At that point, something inside me broke. I didn't know what they were going to do to me, but I knew I couldn't endure another minute of this nightmare, least of all at the hands of my parents. So I started to sob, begging for mercy with all dignity thrown to the winds. "Mom, please, please don't do this. I don't want to die. Let me go, please. Please, Dad, stop her. Help me." My parents only laughed, a shrieking burst of hyena-like laughter, and parroted back echoes of my own sobbing plea, perfectly replicating my voice and words right down to the whimpering. Together they brought me to a small outcropping just on the edge of Apex territory, overlooking the barren hills beyond. There, towering above me, stood Gramps. "I knew I should have been more careful with that map," he sighed. "What?" "Not a mix-up I would have made in my younger days. I'm definitely losing my touch. Still, no use crying over spilled milk. And you made good use of the map. Perhaps you belong here instead of in Beast territory with Nina and her idiot boyfriend." For a moment, I could only stare. "You knew this was going to happen?" I whispered. "Of course. I told you I've been here before, remember? I found it only by accident when I was young, and ever since then I've been exploring it. Not that it's been easy. Lake Nerus is only accessible for 3 days out of every year, and for the rest of the time, it's gone from this world. Then why did you bring us here? Because I wanted to share it with you, said Gramps, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. There's power in this land, the primeval energy of transformation itself, too great for the world to tolerate far more than a few days a year, and that power seeks out sapient vessels whenever they trespass. Humans touched by it are reborn in protein flesh, to embody an aspect of the wild, animalistic simplicity, endless hunger, watchful solitude, primal cunning, or a true hunter's intellect and ruthlessness. But how did you figure all this out? By trial and error. On my first visit, I explored it with a team, and through their sacrifice, I survived long enough to escape a year later. On every visit since, I've brought people with me to test the limits of its power, learning more with every sacrifice. But I'm getting too old to lure tourists out here, and I'm not sharp enough to document it anymore. So? He smiled. I'm retiring to spend more time with my family. There was a pause, as the last remaining seconds of daylight finally bled away. Then Gramps clambered down from the outcropping towards the barren hills of Apex territory, and my parents began dragging me after him. The lights of transformation always shine at nightfall, he mused aloud. Maybe you glimpsed them from a distance before, but it's very different to see it up close. Those lights are the energies of metamorphosis, rising to find vessels. Once every hour until dawn, the light shines, and all that are bathed in its purest radiance are reborn. By then, I was crying again, but Gramps just scoffed. Don't be such a drama queen, Johnny. It's not like I'm killing you. The people taken by Lake Nerus live on as shapeshifters, healthier than any ordinary human. My first 2 test subjects are still thriving as secluses. Even 70 years on, I've met tricksters who fought in the Civil War, apexes who can remember meeting George Washington. Don't you want to live forever? I tried to tell him I didn't want to forget who I was or lose my personality, but by then I was bawling too hard to make the slightest bit of sense. This is a blessing, young man, he continued. This way, we'll be free of the world and all its miseries. Nina and Jason will be mated for life as only animals can be. Your aunt will never know shame again. Your brother is liberated from the pressures of being idolized, and your parents have cast off their suffocating responsibility to truly enjoy life. And you'll never have to grow up, never be tamed, never learn to expect disappointment. Your entire life will be a family camping trip. Ahead, a faint, pale glow began to ripple across the hills. But what do you get out of this? I sobbed. Gramps just smirked. I'm no longer doomed to spend my final days rotting away in some miserable nursing home, and I get to be together with my family forever. And best of all, as an apex, I'll never be troubled by the conscience ever again. Across the barren hills, a searing white light coursed through the air, and Gramps stretched out his arms to bask in the hellish glow. At last, he hissed. Why did I ever hesitate? For a split second, I thought I was next to being consumed by the radiance. Then Nina galloped into view in the shape of a horse, her face still almost human. She must have been following me for the last few hours, still babysitting me despite her transformation. And while Gramps could command my parents easily enough, he'd never been able to control Nina. At the last moment, Nina swept me onto her back and went thundering off in the opposite direction, away from the barren hills, back towards our starting point. I still remember hugging her as we fled, wrapping my arms around her neck and crying into her mane out of sheer relief, even as Gramps bellowed with rage in the distance. And I remember the shadow that blotted out the moon as it pursued us across the forest, sending beasts, gluttons, and even tricksters fleeing before it. I remember Gramps, now an apex with eyes as black as night, chasing after us as anything from a flying mass of blades, lashing Nina's flanks to a giant spider the size of a bus. But Gramps was still getting used to his new body, and Nina outran him in the end. My last clear memory from that night is of being dropped off at the entrance and allowed to stagger off into the road, trying to ignore the sight of Nina and Gramps watching me from the trees. They couldn't follow me. As I later learned, only a handful of shapeshifters have broken free of the lake during its annual 3-day reappearance, escaping to become the cryptids of urban legends. But even so, I didn't want to meet their gaze. I didn't want to start crying again. I was found wandering along the side of a highway 2 days later, starved and dehydrated. After a long stay in hospital, a brief media furore, a failed police investigation, and some rigorous counseling, I was told that Lake Nerus didn't exist, even tossed in the foster system with only a few keepsakes of my original family. And as luck would have it, one of those mementos just happened to include my grandfather's diary. It's been 20 years since then, and I find myself needing to write, because someone needs to know what really happened before it's too late. You see, ever since I was released from the mental hospital for the 3rd time, I've been traveling across the country, migrating from town to town, getting work where I can find it, but always moving on sooner or later. I'm living in Oregon now, and little by little, I'm making my way back to Lake Nerus. It's not because it entranced me or because Gramps brainwashed me or whatever. No, it's simply because after 20 years of loneliness, nightmares, failed relationships, brain-smothering therapy, and condescending social workers, Lake Nerus is the only place in the world that makes sense. So I'm writing this to ensure that some record of what really happened will remain, because I know I won't be able to stay away forever. Soon those precious 3 days of the year will arrive. Soon I'll be with my family again. Soon I'll be home. The first time I heard the hum, it was in the dead of night. Snow had blanketed the town in a heavy, sound-dampening hush, and the only noise in my house was the soft ticking of the clock on the mantel. I was drifting somewhere between sleep and wakefulness when it started, a low, mournful melody, barely audible but impossible to ignore. At first I thought it was the wind howling through the eaves, but this was different. It wasn't random. It was deliberate, rhythmic, almost human. I sat up in bed, holding my breath, straining to listen. The hum seemed to be coming from inside the house. My heart started to race as I fumbled for the lamp on my nightstand, but as soon as the light flickered on, the sound was gone like it had been swallowed by the darkness itself. I told myself it was nothing, just a trick of a half-dreaming mind, but when I went to the window, I froze. There were footprints in the snow, staring at the edge of the woods and leading straight to my house. They stopped abruptly beneath my bedroom window, as if whoever, or whatever, had been out there had been watching me. The next morning the town was buzzing with the news. Mrs. Avery, my neighbor 2 doors down, was missing. Her house was locked up tight, her car untouched in the driveway. The only thing anyone noticed was an odd sound, like faint humming, drifting around her property. Now I can't stop hearing it. The hum follows me everywhere I go, growing louder and closer, as if it's waiting for me to figure out what it wants. Or to take me too. At first I thought I was going mad, a sentient hum that wants to take me. It made no sense, but as the missing persons report kept flooding the bulletin boards, I knew something had to be happening. On the 16th of August, the mayor held a press conference. I'm flipping through channels when I spot her familiar face on Channel 7. I listen in. Madame Watson, what is happening with all these missing people? A reporter queries. We want answers. The mayor responds. There is an ongoing police investigation, and we are working hard to find your loved ones and bring them home safe. The camera zoomed in on the mayor's face, her calm demeanor faltering as the crowd's frustration erupted in a storm of shouts. Someone screamed from the back, their voice cutting through the noise. You've been saying that for 2 weeks. The mayor's expression shifts. She seems uncomfortable, like she's holding something back. A flurry of shouting ensues before the station cuts to commercial. I take the remote and shuffle my thumb around until I feel the power button. I turn it off and head to bed. I lay there, silent. The moon casts a soft shadow on the back end of my room. I drift away to sleep when suddenly, I hear it. I can't pinpoint where it's coming from. It's like a surround sound speaker turned to the lowest volume. The hum is soft, yet eerie. I stand up, listening closer. I still don't know where it's coming from. I decide to investigate, so I equip myself with a flashlight and an old, dull kitchen knife. I hesitated at the edge of the woods, my flashlight beam barely penetrating the thick darkness ahead. Every instinct screamed at me to turn back, but the hum, the cursed hum, pulled me forward. It was as if I had no choice. The footprints continued well into the woods. Animals howling and snow breaking under my boots keep my mind off the god-awful hum in the background. Continuing, I see that the footprints veer off the trail into the denser, wilder area of the forest. As I pressed deeper into the woods, I felt the hum crawling under my skin. My head throbbed, my vision swam, and for a moment I thought I heard my name woven into the melody. The footprints, almost unnatural in size, led me to a small opening. Inside was a quaint cabin, but it felt wrong. It looked ancient, yet new at the same time. The wood was plentiful with cracks, yet the hinges were freshly oiled. The door was slightly ajar, as though it was inviting me in. Stepping in the clearing, the hum was deafening. It smothered my mind in darkness. I raised my flashlight and stepped forward, the crunching snow becoming a haven from the hum. Then I saw it. Movement inside. I stood there for a moment. Should I have gone back? I whispered to no one. I was in too deep now. I enter the cabin, the floorboards a symphony under my weight. I clear the cabin, but no one is inside. Looking deeper, I see musical instruments. A piano, its keys yellowed with age. An old 6-string with 1 string snapped. And a gramophone, gleaming flawlessly despite the state of the cabin. On the platter lay an aged record, its label faded. I extend my hand, now trembling. I pick it up, but the hum grows. It's no longer an organized melody. It's a scream. It's a fighter jet taking flight in my mind. I stumble back, my hands grasping my head in pain. Something moved in the shadows. A flicker, just beyond the reach of my flashlight. No, I muttered, my voice shaking. I turned and bolted, nearly tripping over the doorway in my haste. The hum receded as I ran, fading to a faint, almost soothing drone that nestled in the back of my mind. When I finally stumbled into my bed hours later, the hum was still there, dormant but present, its rhythm a sinister lullaby. Sleep came, but peace did not. I stood in line at the mayor's office, humming softly under my breath without realizing it. The realization jolted me and I clamped my mouth shut. When my turn came, the secretary gestured for me to enter. Inside, Mayor Watson sat behind a massive oak desk, her expression unreadable. "What can I do for you?" she asked, her tone clipped. I dove straight in. "I need answers about the disappearances. The hum, what is it? I know you're hiding something." Her gaze sharpened, but she didn't react immediately. That's a dangerous assumption. she said, leaning forward, "and one I suggest you keep to yourself." "I hear it," I said, my voice shaking. "The hum. Everyone who's heard it is gone. What's happening to me?" Her face tightened, and for a moment she seemed to weigh her words carefully. Finally, she sighed. "My great-grandfather created it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "A song. He wanted it to be perfect, but it became something else. It feeds on curiosity, draws people in. It always leads to the same place." "The cabin," I said, the word falling from my lips like a stone. Her expression darkened. "No one who goes there comes back, and every time, it gets stronger." I shuddered, the hum growing louder in my mind, as if reacting to her words. She stood abruptly, her gaze hard. "You shouldn't have come here," she said, her voice final. "Leave, before it's too late." As I walk to the exit, the hum grows louder in my head, reverberating off my skull. I exit, trying to ignore the intensity. It continues back home. My body began to move on its own. I tried to fight it. My mind screamed for control, but my body no longer obeyed. Each step toward the cabin felt like sinking deeper into quicksand. Inescapable, suffocating. The hum swelled, a living thing coiling tighter around my thoughts. When I reached the clearing, the cabin stood waiting, its crooked frame illuminated by the pale moonlight. My vision blurred, the edges of reality folding in on themselves. I could feel it. The hum wasn't just sound anymore. It was inside me, rewriting me. The door creaked open as if it had been expecting me. The gramophone gleamed in the center of the room, its brass horn catching the faint light. My hand reached for the record, trembling but purposeful, as though it no longer belonged to me. When the needle touched the vinyl, the hum erupted into a symphony, haunting, beautiful, and devastating all at once. It was everything. Joy, despair, love, and terror, woven into a melody that consumed me. My body sagged, and for a moment I felt weightless, as if I were dissolving into the music itself. I wasn't alone. Shadows emerged from the walls, faint outlines of those who had come before me. Their eyes glowed faintly, their mouths moving in unison to the hum. I tried to scream, but no sound came. They weren't trapped. They were the hum. My vision faded, but I could still hear the song, now clearer than ever. It whispered promises, beckoning others. It wasn't just music. It was a message, a signal, and I was its newest voice. The next morning the hum began again, faint but insistent, drifting over the town. Another would hear it soon, another would follow, and I would be waiting.